Hello. Recently, I read a novel which has been really dividing readers' opinions, where some find it incredibly emotional and others have quite a muted reaction to it. So, I want to give my own thoughts and feelings about this book and perspective on it. And it is Love Forms by Claire Adam. And I just read this with my online book club, which is partly how I know there's such a wide variety of perspectives about this, but also this seems to chime with the larger reading community. And so this is the story of Dawn, who is a woman that is born and raised in Trinidad, but she has lived her entire adult life in London. And she had a very traumatic experience when she was a teenager. When she was 16, she became pregnant, and she and her family decided that it was best that she give this baby away. And so she was kind of smuggled into Venezuela to give birth to this child. And it was a harrowing, terrible, terrifying experience, and that is described very vividly in the beginning of the book. And we follow her much later in her life when she's in her mid to late 50s, and she is searching for this lost baby girl who she gave up when she was a teenager. And so we follow her as she discusses what her life has been made up of, and also the continuous search that she's had for her daughter over the course of her life, and how that still continues. And she has just received a message from a woman who is claiming to be her lost daughter. And so that is the central premise of the story. Now, I have to say, I did find this quite an emotional experience, partly because of the dramatic experience that is described early on of her teenage years and going through this really harrowing experience, and how that is bookended with the end of the story, which I won't give anything away, but which is very poignant, and which I found to be this very moving exploration of someone trying to come to terms with a traumatic experience and reconciling with her past. Now, I've seen some criticisms of this novel where it's filled with a lot of sort of seemingly mundane detail, because she is just recounting the experiences of her life, and a lot of details about her life which are seemingly insignificant, but it's like she's sifting through her own past and experience to understand her own life. And she discusses how, her memories are kind of murky, and she acknowledges that she mixes in nostalgia with her experience, but it's also kind of a way of declaring who she is to her daughter, that it's almost like she's preparing this document, or writing this memoir about her experience, to explain what her life is like. And another criticism I've seen of this novel is that it overly explains the mannerisms and manner of speech of Trinidadian life. But I think that is kind of wrapped up with her sense of wanting to connect to this daughter that she has never met and doesn't know anything about. So this sense of kind of over explaining her life, and the way the functions of her community and the functions of her immediate family life, it's almost like she has to get into all of this detail, because she doesn't know anything about the daughter that she gave up, or the context that her daughter is familiar with. Her daughter might have been raised in Venezuela or another country, and have absolutely no knowledge of either Trinidad or indeed the UK, because she gives equal weight to explaining about life in London and the way of English life, and also her own immediate family life and the difficult connection she has with her parents, which are very strained, and it really gets into the conflict that's this created over her life, because her parents, when she gave this baby away, her parents said, okay, it's done, let's not speak about this again, let's just bury it away. And she is dealing with the consequences of that and trying to unearth that and say, no, this has really affected me, and I want to speak about this, and I want to try to connect with my daughter. And there's a very dramatic scene with her father that I found so powerful and effective. But there's also a detail revealed about the father later on in the book that I think gives a really interesting, different perspective about his potential motivations and why he did what he did. So I found that really fascinating as well. And the parts I found most emotional about this story were her imagined conversations with her daughter, and trying to imagine what shape her daughter's life has taken and what she looks like, and how there are so many moments in this book where she's just kind of sitting up late at night looking through her iPad and Googling things and finding images of young Venezuelan women and copying them to her computer, and thinking, oh, this may be what my daughter looks like. But then there's also the tension in the story of wondering, is this woman who has contacted her, is this really her daughter? And so that tension carried me throughout the story, as well as this building emotional sense of wanting to understand herself. And I think that's partly why she is explaining all these details, as well as someone who has lived away from the country where she was born and raised for so long, that she's in a sense defining what Trinidadian life is like for herself, as kind of a way of recollection and reaffirming her sense of identity. And I connected to this as an expat myself, who's lived away from the country I was born and raised in for so long, that I find myself, kind of defining what life is like in Maine, in the United States, in a way that probably people who live in Maine wouldn't do, and it might not even necessarily be true. But we build up this image of what life is like in a place where we spent a significant portion of our life previously. I found it poignant how this story gradually builds up these larger questions about the role and meaning of parenthood, and the connection between a child and parent, and can family connections be formed outside of the family if we have a child or a parent that we have never known throughout our life. Like, what is that connection really like? And if there is someone we find who's really meaningful in our life, and that we establish a strong bond with, like, well, isn't that as strong a connection as a sort of biological connection between a parent and child? So yeah, I liked how it raised these larger questions as well. And as much as there are many moments of sorrow and longing and a sense of loss throughout this book, there are also some beautifully tender moments and really loving moments throughout the book. There's a particular moment where she has this connection with her Auntie Pam, or someone that she calls her Auntie Pam. She's not exactly her aunt in the story. And there are some recollections, because she has two sons that she's had with a marriage which is since broken up in the UK, and the recollections of raising her sons. There's some really wonderful moments of that, and I appreciated how this captured the beauty of experience in this way, and familial experience in this way, as well as showing the real challenges of it and the long-standing themes which can go unsaid and tensions which build up over a long period of time. And also personally, I just really enjoyed how, because she has lived in different locations in South London, and I've lived in South London ever since I moved here a long time ago. And so I recognized a lot of these locations. And so there was that nice familiar experience. But I also appreciated how there was a larger picture built up about the recent history of Trinidad and fluctuations in the economy there, and the strained politics over time, but also the joys of Trinidadian life. And there's wonderful recollections of Carnival and a particular performer named Peter Minchell, who I went and looked up some images and information about him, and he's such a fascinating performer. Also, since this is longlisted for the Booker Prize, and I read another novel recently, Sea Scraper, I couldn't help kind of comparing these two novels. Firstly, in that they're both fairly quiet stories. The style of narration is fairly straightforward, and there's nothing overly dramatic that occurs in the immediacy of these stories. But they also have this really interesting different way of looking at parenthood. So we have Dawn in this story, who gave up her child after a teenage pregnancy, and in this story, the mother of the central character of Thomas kept her child, but has had to make a lot of compromises in her life in order to raise her son. But Dawn, part of her justification for giving away her child was that she wanted to have a larger life and had professional aspirations, which still haven't really worked out for her. And she has quite a nice life, but she has sons that she loves, but yeah, she has experienced a lot of disappointment as well. And so in a way, even though these novels are very different from each other in so many ways in kind of the characters and locations, but they also in a way like feel like opposite sides of the same coin. So overall, I did really enjoy this story and the leisurely pace that it takes, moving backwards and forwards in time in Dawn's experience between the past and present to form a picture of her life that she's gradually building up herself to understand her own experience, and looking at the larger issue of teenage pregnancy and the enormous consequences of this, that decisions are made, and the pressure that young women are put under, and scrutinizing this, and you know, especially a particular place and time, the enormous pressure that Dawn experienced to give up her child, and then the long-term consequences of this. And it's something that I think that anyone can relate to, whether they're male or female, whether they have a child or not, that we are all the child of someone, and whether we know our parents or not, or have a close connection to our parents or not, there will be tensions there that every kind of reader will be able to relate to in different ways. But I fully accept and understand that some readers haven't been able to connect with this novel so strongly. So yeah, on the whole, I found it to be a very quietly impactful book in a lot of different ways. But if you have a different perspective, or if you agree or disagree with me about this novel, or want to point out anything else, I would love to hear about that in the comments below. Or if you're interested in reading it now. And yeah, I really enjoy Claire Adam as a writer. I read her debut novel as well. And yeah, I think there's a special emotional power to her writing. So thank you for watching me discuss this book, and I hope you're doing well and reading good things. I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.